And then a mighty angel cried out with a voice that shook the seven heavens, "Who is worthy to open the scroll? Who can break its seals?" And the silence that followed was worse than any scream. No man in heaven, no man on earth, no man under the earth. Nobody answered. And an old man on a rocky island, exiled by the Roman Empire, fell to his knees on the cold floor of a cave and began to weep like a child. He had walked with Jesus. He had leaned on his chest at the Last Supper. He had stood at the foot of the cross when everyone else fled. He was the last of the 12 still alive. And now, at nearly 90 years old, banished to a stone in the middle of the Aegean Sea, he was seeing the very throne room of God. And there was no one worthy to open the future of the world. If you have ever felt forgotten by God in the hardest hour of your life, write, "I have been there," in the comments. This is the story of John of Patmos. To understand why he was crying in that cave, you have to go back 60 years, back to the shores of Galilee, back to a strong young fisherman with sun-darkened arms and a temper so quick that Jesus himself had nicknamed him and his brother the Sons of Thunder. John had grown up mending nets with his father Zebedee. He knew the smell of fish scales in the morning, the weight of wet ropes cutting into his shoulders, the sound of the lake slapping against wooden hulls before dawn. He was not a scholar. He was not a rabbi. He was a working man with rough hands and a heart that loved fiercely and hated fiercely. And then, one afternoon, everything changed. A carpenter from Nazareth walked past his boat and called his name, and John left the nets on the sand and never picked them up again. For 3 years he followed Jesus everywhere. He saw the blind receive sight. He saw the dead sit up in their coffins. He saw 5 loaves feed 5,000 men. He climbed a mountain and watched his teacher shine like the sun. He heard words no human ear had ever heard before, and of all the 12, he became the one Jesus loved in a particular way, the one who leaned on his shoulder, the one to whom the Lord entrusted his own mother from the cross. And then the years began to pass, and one by one his brothers began to fall. His own brother James was the first, beheaded by Herod barely 10 years after the resurrection. Then Stephen stoned, then Philip, then Matthew, then Peter crucified upside down in Rome because he said he was not worthy to die the same way as his Lord. Then Paul, beheaded outside the walls of the same city. Then Thomas pierced by spears in India. Then Andrew, then Bartholomew, then all of them, one by one, until only John was left, and that is where our story truly begins. The emperor was named Domitian, and Domitian did not tolerate anyone who refused to call him our Lord and God. Christians refused. So Domitian hunted them. He burned them. He fed them to the beasts in the arenas. He drowned them by the hundreds. And one day, his soldiers came for the last apostle. They did not kill him. Roman legend says they tried, that they threw him into a cauldron of boiling oil in front of the Latin Gate in Rome, and that the old man came out unharmed, as if the fire itself refused to touch him. Whether that story is exact or not, the outcome is certain. The empire could not silence John, so the empire exiled him. They put him on a small ship. They sailed him south across the Aegean until the mainland disappeared. And they left him on Patmos, a rocky, barren island barely 10 miles long, with almost no fresh water, almost no soil, almost no comfort. A place used by Rome to bury inconvenient men alive without having to bury them. John was nearly 90 years old. His hair was white. His hands trembled slightly when he wrote, his back curved from decades of walking Judean roads and standing in stormy boats. His eyes had seen everything a human being could see, and now they looked out over the same grey sea, day after day, waiting for a death that seemed to have forgotten him. And you might think this is where the story ends. An old man, alone, dying slowly on a piece of rock. But you would be wrong. This is exactly where the story begins. Because on a certain Sunday, on a day John himself called the Lord's Day, he had climbed the hill to his cave to pray. The wind was strong, the sun was rising, and he heard behind him a voice like a trumpet. He turned, and he fell as if dead. Standing in the mouth of the cave was a figure like a son of man, dressed in a robe down to his feet, with a golden sash across his chest. His hair was white like wool, white like snow. His eyes were flames of fire. His feet were like polished bronze glowing in a furnace. His voice was like the sound of many waters, and from his mouth came a sharp, two-edged sword, and his face shone like the sun in full strength. John collapsed, and a hand touched his shoulder, and he heard the voice he had missed for 60 years say the words he had heard 1,000 times before. "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and behold, I am alive forever and ever." And what happened in that cave over the next weeks and months would change the entire history of the Christian Church. Do you think this story ends here? It has barely started. Jesus dictated to John 7 letters, one for each of the 7 churches of Asia Minor. He knew each of them by name. He knew their virtues and their compromises. He praised Ephesus for its endurance, but rebuked it for losing its first love. He warned Pergamum, where Satan had his throne. He commanded Thyatira. He shook Sardis awake from spiritual death. He opened doors before Philadelphia that no man could close. And he told Laodicea that its lukewarm faith made him want to spit it out of his mouth. John wrote every word. His old hands scratched them on parchment with an iron reed dipped in soot ink. He wrote fast because the voice kept speaking, and when the 7 letters were finished, the voice said something that would change what he was looking at. "Come up here." And a door opened in heaven. And this is the moment when the old exile, the forgotten fisherman on the rock in the middle of the sea, was pulled into the throne room of the universe. He saw a throne. He saw one seated on it, whose appearance was like jasper and carnelian. He saw a rainbow around the throne that looked like emerald. He saw 24 elders in white robes with golden crowns. He saw 4 living creatures full of eyes, day and night crying out, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." He saw a sea of crystal spread out like glass before the throne. And he saw, in the right hand of the one seated there, a scroll written on both sides, sealed with 7 seals. And that is when the mighty angel spoke. "Who is worthy to open the scroll and break the seals?" And no one answered. And John, who had followed Jesus for 3 years, who had leaned on his chest, who had heard his voice for 60 years, even after his ascension, who had seen the risen Christ himself in the cave weeks earlier, John began to weep, because he understood what that scroll was. It was the future of the world. It was the destiny of humanity. It was the plan of God to redeem all creation, and if no one could open it, then everything he had suffered had been for nothing. Every friend he had lost, every year of exile, every empty morning on that rock, all in vain. And one of the elders came near and touched him and said, "Do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has conquered. He can open the scroll." John looked up, expecting to see a lion, and he saw a lamb standing in the middle of the throne, looking as though it had been slain. And that lamb walked forward and took the scroll from the right hand of the Almighty. And the entire throne room burst into a song no human being had ever heard before. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. And then the seals began to open, and what John saw over the next visions was something no human mind was ever meant to carry alone. He saw 4 horsemen ride out, white, red, black, and pale, carrying conquest, war, famine, and death. He saw the souls of the martyrs under the altar crying out, "How long, O Lord?" He saw a sun turn black as sackcloth, and a moon turn red as blood. He saw a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation and tribe and tongue, standing before the throne in white robes, with palm branches in their hands. He saw locusts with faces like men and hair like women. He saw a dragon with 7 heads waiting to devour a child. He saw a woman clothed with the sun. He saw a beast rising from the sea. He saw the fall of the great harlot city. But he also saw something else, something that made the tears of the cave worth every drop. He saw a new heaven and a new earth. He saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God like a bride adorned for her husband. He saw a river of living water flowing from the throne. He saw a tree of life whose leaves were for the healing of the nations. And he heard a great voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away." And the old man sitting in his cave on his rocky island understood. He understood why James had died first. He understood why Peter had hung upside down. He understood why Paul had been beheaded. He understood why he himself had been left to grow old, alone in exile. Because someone had to see this. Someone had to write it down. Someone had to carry the last message of Jesus back to the churches before the door of Revelation closed forever. And that someone was him. The forgotten one, the last of the 12, the old man on the rock. He wrote for weeks, maybe months, his hand cramped, his eyes strained in the poor light of the cave. But he wrote every vision, every word, every trumpet, every bowl, every song, every promise. And when he was done, he rolled the parchment carefully, and he waited. Not long after, the Emperor Domitian was assassinated in his own palace by his own servants. The new emperor released the political exiles, and a small ship came back to Patmos to take a certain old prisoner home. John returned to Ephesus. He walked down from the boat, an old man with a rolled scroll under his arm. And the church of Ephesus, the same church he had rebuked in the first letter, wept when they saw him, because they had thought him dead. And they read the letter, and they copied it, and they sent it to Smyrna. And Smyrna sent it to Pergamum, and Pergamum to Thyatira. And in a few years the entire church of the Roman Empire held in its hands the last book of the Bible. John lived a few more years in Ephesus. Ancient tradition says that in his final days he was so weak that his disciples had to carry him into the church on a chair, and that he could no longer preach long sermons, that he would look at his people with his old blue eyes and say only one sentence over and over: "Little children, love one another." When they asked why he never said anything else, he would smile and answer, "Because it is the Lord's commandment, and if you do it, it is enough. And one day, without noise, without fanfare, without imperial persecution, the last apostle closed his eyes and went to see the Lamb he had seen on the throne." If you have listened this far, subscribe to walk with us through more of these stories. And here's the question I want to leave you with today. You are probably not exiled on a rocky island, but you may be in your own Patmos right now. A season where you feel forgotten. A season where the letters are not coming. A season where everyone you love seems to be moving on while you sit still. And you might be tempted to believe that God has passed by you. But maybe, just maybe, the reason you are exactly where you are is that heaven is preparing to open a door above you that would not have opened anywhere else. What is the Patmos you are on right now? Write it in the comments, and keep watching for the door.